Okay, we'll be going to a funeral in a couple of hours, and I just wanted to talk briefly, about death and some thoughts on death. We often hear dust to dust and ashes to ashes when thinking of death. Sure, the body crumbles to dust after death, but the spirit moves on. Don't fall into the trap that the atheists and the pagans fall into of believing that we are our bodies. We are nothing more, that we do not have a spiritual component that continues on. If you go with this dust to dust, ashes view, and you take it to too extreme a degree, you start identifying with the body, and that then you fall into the same trap that the atheists and pagans do. Consciousness is not dependent upon the body. Consciousness is not generated by the brain. Uh, the electrochemical jelly, the protoplasmic brain inside our heads is not the source of consciousness. The body and the brain are really vehicles of consciousness. Uh, don't do what the neuroscientists do, where they think that the brain is the source of consciousness. It's rather that the brain and body are vehicles of consciousness. Mind transcends brain. And let me just check my notes. I don't want to forget anything. Okay. Now I want to talk a little bit about mercy. Um, we see tremendous injustice and tragedy in the world, and there's not much mercy that we see in the world. There's a lot of suffering, and for many years in my adult life, I despaired. I had despaired of God's mercy because of what I see going on in the world, all the terrible violence and injustice and hatred and innocent people suffering so terribly from so many things. But over time, I came to reflect that death is a sign of God's mercy. Um, Without death, there'd be no means by which we could progress to the spiritual plane of existence and leave this terrible material universe, which is filled with so much suffering. There'd be no means by which we could, transition into another mode of being. There'd also be no end to our suffering in this world. I mean, if there was no death, we'd be trapped in this world forever. I don't think, or let me put it this way, no sane person would want to stay in this world of suffering and injustice. So those are some of my thoughts. Um, I really conclude that death is actually a sign of God's mercy, um, for the reasons I just gave. So that's something to think about. So just the thing to take from this is that consciousness is not dependent upon the body. When the body dies, many of us believe consciousness survives and continues on, and that we were created for a higher purpose. And death allows us to transition from this world, as we would not want to be trapped in this world forever. So death at its proper time is a good thing.